You're welcome to the Dataphyte Twitter space. Today we're discussing Dataphyte Foundation's report, Gender Disparity, Democratic Realities and Governance Outcome in Nigeria, and what findings from that report was about. In terms of representation, public trust, and democratic performance as the country prepares for the 2027 election. The conversation forms part of our continued commitment to promoting data-driven dialogue on governance, policy reform, and inclusion. We all know that Nigeria's engagement with gender and governance has evolved across several eras. And in the colonial period, women held recognized roles in trade, mediation, and community leadership within the centralized system. Colonial disrupted these structures by imposing centralized institutions that, elevated male authority and excluded women from formal politics, creating imbalance that carried into post-independence period. And since 1960, successive administrations paid little or no attention sometimes to women's political inclusion, despite their strong contributions to national movements. Even the return of democracy in 1999, along with Nigeria's commitment under global forums such as the Convention on Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women and the Belgian platforms for action, didn't produce the expected progress. So over the past 2 decades, electoral circles and reform debate have reportedly exposed wide gender gaps in representation, influence, and access to political resources. And today, gender inequality remains embedded in Nigeria's political economy. Parties act as the main keepers, leadership gets high financial barriers, patronage, work, limited institutional support continue to disadvantage women. These structural challenges to separate socio-cultural expectations, security concerns, and economic pressures that restrict women's participation in public space. The data is stark. In 2023, women had only 3% of Senate seats, 4% in the House of Reps, and 5% in State Assemblies. Because way below national and international benchmarks, and even the proposed dedicated seat for women, would still leave Nigeria behind global standards. The report by Dataphyte highlights the combined impact of structural, institutional, and cultural barriers. Social norms continue to meet women's aspiration. Legislative reforms face resistance, as seen in rejection of the 2016 Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. Women in politics endure harassment, violence, online abuse, party processes, financial obstacles, other restrict visibility and access to nominations. These disparities weaken democratic legitimacy, meet diversity of perspective, shape policy, and reduce institutional effectiveness. Global evidence consistently show that strong participation of women in governance leads to better development outcomes, improved social cohesion, more durable peace processes, and enhanced economic platforms. As Nigeria enters another electoral cycle, this discussion aims to examine both the challenges and the opportunities. We will reflect the report's findings, interrogate the barriers that persist, and consider the reforms, cultural shift needed to advance a more inclusive and effective democratic system. Welcome again, everyone. That was just a short and so that we have an understanding of where we're going the conversation. We're going to meet the panelists now. I'm going to start Miriam, who will tell us in 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, about herself and the work she does.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much to Dataphyte for this privilege. This very timely and crucial conversation, today being December 10, and of course, wrapping up the 16 days of activism against all forms of violence against women and girls. My name is Miriam Adiola Gbadibo. I'm the founder of the MAG Foundation, that is the Miriam Adiola Gbadibo MAG Foundation. And our thematic areas are gender equity, good health, and of course, climate sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Kenny, do you want to?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Kenny Aderaba, and I'm the Community Relation Officer for Spaces for Change. And just like my job description allows me to poke my nose in every of our thematic areas across our desks, and my role allows me to intersect with every of our desks, be it energy and environmental justice, gender and youth inclusion, housing and urban governance, and defending the civic space. I'm a community person and I love working with marginalized community, and our work helps us to focus on bridging the gap between community and resources, advocating for equity, and developing and supporting initiatives that promotes community resilience and inclusion. Thank you very much for this invitation to join this very timely conversation.
Thank you, Kenny. Lucy, say a little bit about yourself, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lucy Okonkwo, and I am the lead models and metrics person at Dataphyte, as well as the program executive of AI and digital futures at Dataphyte. So I lead different work, especially research at Dataphyte, and this work was one of my research, intense research, especially to deal with the thematic area of representation and governance, which is part of Dataphyte's framework. And I hope we enjoyed this session. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I'm going to start with you. So I would like for you to just give us a brief overview of the report. I read the report and it covered a range of issues from historical to and structural barriers, the consequences of women exclusion from governance. As the lead author of the report, what motivated this work and what are the core problems on the Nigerian public and policy makers to pay attention to with this report?
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Rosemary, for that question. Actually, what spurred my thought around this research, or spurred my interest or inspiration to actually conduct this research and write it, was the fact, earlier this year we had something to do with a request to increase the quota of women in governance. And looking at the numbers before then, I found out that the numbers were quite low, and it's almost spelling like doom for Nigeria when it comes to gender equality or gender equity in governance. Also, the situation with Senator Natasha this year also, brought that inspiration or that idea to a crescendo, seeing what happened to her while she was being suspended from office, and seeing that even in the House there were less women to actually back her up and make sure that what happened to her didn't happen. All these things just spurred my idea to looking into how is women representation in governance. What are the telltale signs, obstructing why there are not much women in the House of Legislation? Why are there not much women in cabinet? And even if there are women in the cabinet as ministers, why are they not appointed critical roles, very, 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 very important or heavy decision-making roles in the government? And also, even going down to the local government strata and even to the State House of Assembly, seeing the number of women there. In fact, I was listening to somebody today just to buttress what this report was saying, and she's from Kaduna State, and she said there's only one female senator in the House of Representatives in Kaduna, which of all the number of House of Representatives there, there's just one woman. And this just shows that there are limitations even in our development process. Because looking through the research, finding out that women are actually very instrumental in bringing out or passing policies and laws that encourage development actually brought me to think maybe the reforms that Nigeria need might actually be more women in power and not the other plethora of things that we're putting on the table. So these informed my decision of going through this research and seeing all the structural and cultural limitations that were obstructing these women as I went on this research showed me that something can actually be done. And I think that actually spurred all that was put in this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I'll still stay with you. One very important part of this report that I really like for you to emphasize on, and of course we have all, I believe some of us or most of us have read it, and it should be worrisome, is that the report showed that as of 2023, women hold only 3% of Senate seats and 4% in the House. Even with the proposed, dedicated seats, Nigeria is still far below the 30% United Nations benchmark. In your view, what has sustained this long-standing resistance to this affirmative action in Nigeria political class? Lucy.
All right. All that we could see is this actually has a root. It's beyond just, it starts with culture, starts with even from how women are perceived, even at the family units. That's the very grassroots part of our, of our whole of human life, which is family. The way women are built and then either thrown into leadership or made so conscious of, cultural limitations that would limit them from actually pursuing leadership roles. So I would say first, the family unit. So we start from the grassroots, the family unit, how girls are being trained. Are they trained to be leaders? And this thing, we've seen that it has come around to become a cultural, a cultural value or a societal value which we as Nigerians have inculcated. And it's now seen that if I as a woman want to come out, like I put in that report, like some senators women that wanted to come out for elections and they were actually judged by society. So not to be judged, these women stay behind. That's one reason. The second reason I would give for the reason why this thing is still perpetuating in our system is the political party system we have. The systems around the political parties, how they are structured. We will see that even the system at the political party unit don't even give women that chance to also rise. If you can read from the stories and even the report that one of our ministers herself, our former minister, Minister Honorable Obieze Kwesili, even gave and said that women are not actually given a chance even at the political party unit. Their slots sometimes are actually sold. And while I was doing this research, I came across other research that said that not just are their slots sold, some of these women, even when they're given positions in political parties, they're given positions that are very outside decision making, which is just head of welfare. And that just removes them completely from the system of contesting for something like governor, state governor, or a higher form in the political party system. And these and some other things, socio-cultural barriers, cultural, structural barriers, and even the way parties run their, the money, the financial means attached to it, and the lack of political will, even by the country itself, to foster this thing. Yeah, I know we started something like putting out a quota system this year, but is that enough? That's the question we should keep asking. Is that enough enough to get women to be part of the serious governance issue in the country. I think these are all the reasons why I feel this particular thing is still perpetuating even in our democracy.
Thank you, Lucy. I will come back to you on some of these things that you raised, especially the that background for education, the family unit and all of that. But let me come to Miriam. I read one of your reports. I saw a report you did, I think, in 2023, that spoke to the benefit of gender diversity. And I think it emphasized that, where there is a balance of leadership, there are positive outcomes, especially when, the women in that structure are given, power to they have a voice in that system. Is surprising. I know, I also read in the same report where Lucy also mentioned the part about corporate governance and how women are excelling in corporate governance. I'm wondering, Miriam, and from your experience and from the research that you have also done, why is it so difficult for us to achieve so much in the corporate sector, and is so difficult in the political space? What should Nigerian policymakers, take away from the evidence of what's happening in the corporate sector?
All right, thank you very much for that question. Well, it is crucial, and I'll just take away from some of what Lucy said. So currently, what we see when it comes to the imbalance is attitude does play a huge role. Um, Women themselves, we need a society whereby women themselves believe there is a capacity to lead. You will find that there are structural barriers, as she said. For instance, in certain cases, there's usually an incumbency factor. Take the political system, for instance. Nigeria tends to favor incumbents. It's just a standard with Nigeria. They tend to favor incumbents who are typically men, and usually dislodging a sitting senator requires an immense resource. And most times women lack that because you find a lot of women are homemakers. They lack access to equity. They tend to lack donor support. They tend to lack familial support. A lot of times when they attain or aspire for leadership positions, either in the corporate or political sector, still hanging within politics, since we're talking around governance, there's also the cost. This is a very real down to earth conversation that most times people don't like to have. Nomination forms when it comes to governance is ridiculously high. And when you think about it, for women, there are no free forms for women. The cost sometimes ranges between 15 million to even 100 million, depending on what you're targeting. And there may be even hidden fees and other things. Then, of course, there's gatekeeping. They always mention how meetings take place late in the night between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. There are social cultural barriers, which I think is actually one of the major issues, the mindset. And Lucy did touch on that right from the educational system, from the home system, the build up. Like, how do we get more women to support women? How do we get women to, stay in the fight? Get in the fight, stay in the fight, and know that you have a chance. And for women to support other women, even for men to support women, the he for she's, it's important. There's the indigenship dilemma. Usually, married women tend not to belong anywhere. There's that homelessness in that way. What are we saying in essence? We can crunch the numbers all we want to, but certain things have to change. Certain things have to change. There's also violence, thuggery, weaponization. She talks about tokenism, that whole thing whereby people feel that women are just given positions to silence those who are advocating for more positions. But the positions they're eventually given are not positions whereby they're able to make critical impact making decisions that affect fellow women or lift other women in society. These are all some things that we need to highlight on. I sincerely apologize for the noise in the background. But you talked about the bill. Let's highlight on the bill. The bills. There were about 5 bills that were thrown out in 2022. around governance. And of course, one of them was the very popular, which has been talked about a lot this year, the special seats bill for women. This is something that's not unnecessary. It's actually quite necessary. If we think about it, it will help us a great deal. And it will put, when women are put in positions of power, you will find more women in positions of corporate governance feeling encouraged to move forward. Now we have a long way to go with this. I beg your pardon in case I sound a bit amazed. I'm busy rattling through traffic and just trying to ensure that I don't lose my position of governance, even right here in the car. I tell you, it's ridiculous, but you know how it is. Some men feel women can't drive. So while I'm on this space, it's really incredible. So the creation of special seats bill for women is really, really important. We've talked about it a lot. One woman to create one seat per senatorial district for women, one seat per federal constituency for women is absolutely important. When you have more women given positions, and the list goes on, basically creating about 111 new seats intentionally, not mistakenly, but intentionally with the support of men, you will find that more men, even in corporate structures, would tend to have a mindset shift or a mindset reorientation about putting women in positions of authority, trusting women's decision making process. Certain patriarchal narratives have to shift. This thing that women are not logical enough to handle certain positions of power. These kind of conversations need to be thrown out the window. That men are logical, women are illogical. Women can't handle certain things. Both at the national level, at the state level, creating seats for women is absolutely important. Look at some of the arguments people have given. Something as simple as the special seats bill. People have created arguments just to counter it. They said, oh, it promotes tokenism. It dilutes meritocracy. It's unconstitutional. It creates super legislators. And so many excuses. It makes you wonder why people try so hard to keep women out of positions of power. Why not give her a chance? Why do we try so hard to actually keep women out of positions of power? Seats that are won, seats that are won through elections and contested by women, they're not appointed. The women actually gain their political and decision making power through elections. There's a lot that can be said around these things. But what I can say is bills like the special seats bill is something that we need to look into very, very, very delicately. It's something that we need to consider very highly. And I'm going to drop it for now, but I will still come back up. Please permit me to drop it for now,
All right.
if that's okay.
Thank you very, very much. And I'm going to ask Lucy. I'm just following that question from Miriam, or that response from Miriam, and I want to emphasize on the tokenism that she was mentioning. And this bill, the proposed bill seat for women, continues to generate more debate, as we're doing right now. Do you think, Lucy, that the approach is a genuine path to empowerment, or this is just again another risk of tokenism? And will internal quota for at the party level, giving them a quota, would that really uh, would that be like a sustainable solution rather than just create the space and put them out there? Do you think giving them the power at the party quota level would be a more sustainable solution? I say this because there's a part of your report that spoke to power. You said something around even if you give them the numbers and they don't have the power, which is the voice, then is basically useless. So what do you think is the best approach if this new proposed seat is coming off as tokenism? Lucy, are you there? Can you hear me?
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, thank you. Network is going off and on, so pardon me for that.
But
All right. So,
you have the question.
I think you were asking about the quota system that wants to be put in place and the idea that is going to be more tokenism than real positions, right?
Yes. Yes, correct. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Looking at the position, ministers that was put in example. In 2011, that's the period under Goodluck, President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. That was the period that we had the highest number of women in cabinet. And out of these 13 women, I believe it was 13 at the time, out of these 13 women, I believe only 3 were given very prominent positions of decision making. I would more or less say 2, because one person out of the 3 was given normal position, which is occupied by a woman, Minister of Women Affairs, of course. And then the remaining, I think the Minister of Agriculture then was a woman, and also the Minister of Finance, which we know, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. 10 women. These women were given cabinet roles, but their voices were not being. I think one more should be the Minister of Petroleum. Yeah, but most of the other women were missing in the crowd. They were just there. They were just there. This is a sample of what appointing women, or if they would give women seats in the government that they don't feel that they earn. It's like, okay, all right, this seat, that seat is for women. Even the male figures in the cabinet who believe that these women did not even earn that role. They didn't earn that role, so why would they accord them that respect or accord them that particular seat to make decisions? If they were just handpicked, let's say from their party, and just dumped and just dropped as one of the people in the cabinet, they might not be considered for anything relevant other than just being seat warmers. They just have a seat in the cabinet. And this, although yes, it will increase our number or the number of women in these governmental positions, but more or less with their voice being silenced even on that seat, it's more or less like they are not there. So if they're not given critical chances to make decisions, or to even enact or follow through be part of real policy making, or part of real conversations in our governance, then it more or less feels like, yes, they have the numbers, but they are not there to actually make any decision. And that in itself is not what we're advocating for. Yes, we're advocating for more women representative in government, but more than that, we're advocating for more women whose voices should be heard. Not just more women, but more women whose voices should be heard. More women who should be given a chance to actually make critical decisions that will further our democracy, or that will further development within the country. That's what we're advocating for. And that's where I will leave that conversation.
Thank you very much. Lisa, you made a very valid point. And even with the few women that are trying to make their voices heard, are, being attacked online. And that brings me to my next question, and to you, Kenny. The report raised online harassment against women in public life, especially during the 2019 election. And this has deterred a lot of women and aspirants from coming online to do their campaign. We saw some strong women like, we have mentioned Obi Ezekwesili, we saw Remi Shonaya, and Eunice Ted Jude. They few of them were, we still saw them online, despite all the campaign online snare and campaign, abuse and all of that. I think that is one area that is very discouraging, even for the few women that have, are bold enough and have, taken that courage to come out and, want to represent us in governance. But, online harassment and abuse is also a major challenge. Kenny, based on your experience and the work that you do, what role can the civil society or women's network group, or even the government to per se, what should they be doing, to help women, campaign safely online, and just be able to use the digital space safely and strategically. Kenny?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. And this actually just link credence to a conversation we're having at our Monday debriefing meeting. And it's actually quite sad that in 2025, we're still having conversations around women protection, women's rights, gender equality. I remember a colleague of mine attended an event that was hosted by the National Human Rights Commission, focusing on women and girl child and socio-cultural norms that continue to fuel harmful traditional practice, gender inequality, and violence against women. And while she was giving observation about the meeting, my executive director, she sighed deeply and she made a statement. She was like, I can't believe in 2025, we're still having conversation around mainstreaming gender in governance, policy, practice, and processes. And she went on to explain that while she was an undergraduate in the university, that she actually wrote a project around this topic. And I also mentioned, and I think my other female colleagues in the room also mentioned that they also wrote a project. My executive director probably wrote a project before I was even given birth to, or before I took my first walk as a child. But this is me like decades later, also writing the same project around the same issue, around the same thing. Other people around me to also writing the same project. And I'm very sure there are thousands of literature online also talking about gender protection, how to put women at the table, how to ensure their voices are being heard. It's exhausting and honestly, it's actually exasperating. Like, to realize that after years of hard work by civil society organizations, after decades of workshops, seminars, policies, and even global commitment and national strategies that even the government itself adopted or established, Nigeria is still at this place. We're still having conversations around it. And it feels actually like a very bad and a very distasteful joke. And it's actually very annoying. And when you look at other countries, other African countries that have moved way ahead of us, it's actually crazy that we're referring back to past glory of how it was better in 2011. It was better under Jonathan's era. And we're in 2025 and we are retrogressing. And I'm looking at other African countries. Rwanda is actually one country that actually I admire when you're talking about the postal child, when it comes to women representation in governance. And if you look at the steps that they have taken, you would see that these steps are very intentional. You will see that these steps are actually directing and aligning every angle, every structure, every system towards achieving this. And it is also inclusive of not just civil society, but even political parties. One of the things that I know that they did right, I know the ruling party of Rwanda, the Rwanda Patriotic Front, RPF, make the policies of gender inclusion. They do not treat it as charity. They treat it as good governance. You cannot expect a woman in your political party going out to campaign and you do not put the necessary support that she's supposed to have. You do not make adequate and special provision for women. And you just generalize that, oh, if a man can do it and a man can just go about his campaign the way he wants to, a woman should be able to do it. But the circumstances are quite different. I remember there was a time when Natasha was campaigning in her state and she was attacked. And the people that came to a rally was also attacked that year. And you would not even hear statements from our political party or political party condemning such acts. What Rwanda also did was that parties actively recruit, train, and support women candidates. But this is the exact opposite in Nigeria, where parties do not just discourage women, they impose expensive nomination fee on women, they reserve winnable seats for men, and treat women as wings or ceremonial groups. That is where their importance are being confined to. So in Rwanda, women being in politics, it is not just symbolic. It is strategic. It is deliberate. It is intentional. It is not just the job of civil society. It is the job of everybody, and it even starts with the political party. Understanding that this is a priority. It is not just about rhetoric. It's not just about tokenism. It's not just about, okay, yes, it's not just about something being superficial. It's about knowing that it's not just, and I hate this thing that they do that, oh, let's just give this one to this woman. She has been very loyal to this party. And they give them this woman leader, yadada, all those very crazy positions that gives you mind-blowing edicts sometimes. And you see that in a country that is actually very progressive and is actually looking forward, and when you look at the ideology of the political parties, they are looking at appointments that are actually very, 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 very strategic rather than substantive. And they make rooms and policies, they are very intentional about it. Everybody's hands needs to be on deck. I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Kenny. I will come back to you on another question, very important one that talks about the introduction of independent candidacy. But I want to talk to Lucy, because you also raised the point about Rwanda. I think you were making an example with Rwanda, and Lucy also mentioned this in the report. Lucy, if you're still there, I would like you to just speak a little more about the issue of Rwanda. I'm trying to pull up that part of the report. Just give me 1 second. Yes. Lucy, you emphasized using that your beautiful chart to talk about Rwanda, and I saw Rwanda, Senegal, South Africa. These people have made they have achieved meaningful progress. Rwanda, for example, has more than 60% women in parliament. Senegal, about the same thing. And South Africa has also benefited from voluntary party quota. What lesson can Nigeria draw from these examples? They are African countries. We're not getting over our head and comparing ourselves to other continents, Europe and America. We're talking fellow African countries that are taking these things very serious. What lessons should we, Nigeria, and our politicians and government, what lessons should they be taking from these other African countries in terms of the way they are cherishing and giving voice to women in leadership, and how it is shaping their government and policies? Lucy.
All right, thank you so much for this question, Ms. Rosemary. All right, yeah, looking through the Rwanda, I'll call Rwanda like a prototype. Rwanda is actually celebrated globally for their number of women that is involved in their governing system, even above, I think, the United States of America, if I'm correct. So Rwanda is actually like a prototype of seeing women take more part in government. We could see even from what they've done number of quota of women in their governance system. We could see what that has even done for Rwanda. Having that number of women, I saw an example during when I was doing my research on Rwanda, and I found out that because of the increase in the number of women in their governing system, they were able to actually pass a law that that helped in land inheritance, reproductive rights. And as we know, land inheritance is something we're still struggling with in Nigeria. The number of women that have access to these to land, even to inherit landed properties, we see that that's actually a struggle. But because there was an increased number of women in their parliamentary system, they were able to actually pass this into law for land inheritance, and also things to do with maternal mortality, reduce the number of maternal mortality and everything to do with their reproductive rights. And aside from Rwanda, we could also see examples of things like places like Kuwait, like Sweden, where the number of women representatives have increased. And we can see the sway that holds on developmental policies being passed in these countries. Take, for instance, in Sweden. The increase in number of women in parliament in Sweden led actually to the increase to the dealing with the labor rights law. That is, now there is a room for women to have, a nursing place at every working place. So we can see that with increasing number of women in parliament in places like Rwanda, we can see that more developmental issues are actually being touched on. And I believe that's actually what Nigeria needs now more at the moment, is having more developmental issues being sorted and being passed into law, things on education, things on health, things on maternal mortality, which is also health, women in agriculture when it comes to having landed properties. So these things, we see them being done and changed because women are in authority, women are in the process or the corridors of power. They're able to make change. And this, if we could learn that, I believe that the situation of education, as we're crying out right now, might actually be changed. Things on health, especially maternal mortality, child nutrition, things of that nature would definitely be touched on for better development. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you so much. I'm coming back to you now, Kenny. But before Kenny, I hope Miriam is still taking her place in the road on the road
I'm here.
safely. I hope you are still
No,
taking
I'm
your
right
place
here.
on the road safely. But I will come back. I will come back to you
I'm
soon.
keenly listening.
Okay,
Trust
great.
me. Forgive me for being a bit distracted, but I'm listening very keenly to the
All right.
conversation, and you're making very salient points.
No problem. Just want to be sure that you're safe. Kenny, I'm coming back to you on this, Nigeria saying that they're considering a bill to introduce independent candidacy, which would allow individuals to contest elections without political party backing, rather. Given the major financial and party-related cultural barriers that women still face, even with the existing structure, how realistic can an independent, candidacy open pathways for women to contest and win election? In what ways might this complement the recent, past special seats by women to boost overall representation? Is this a realistic, um, you know, goal, or what, in your own opinion? Do you think this is realistic, the introduction of independent candidacy? Kenny?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Before I answer the question, I just wanted to add a little bit to what Lucy said concerning Rwanda. And I just wanted to say that Rwanda's success is not a miracle. And it's actually a result of deliberate structural, constitutional, and cultural choices. It's actually a result of when people are intentional about implementing political will and legal reforms. So using them as a best practice, they came from a very long road. After the 1994 genocide, Rwanda took the step to rewrite their constitution, and they were very hardcore on gender equality. And they made sure that it was not just in the constitution, it was being implemented across board. They made sure that it was not just an aspiration, but they saw it as a requirement. It is a must have. So I just hope that one day we'll move from the talks and we'll move to actual realization of what we want when we're talking about gender mainstreaming in governance policies, process, and practices. So let me answer the question of independent candidacy. I actually believe it's realistic, but it is not immediate. It requires both legal reform, like I said, political will, and at the moment, Nigeria is actually struggling with both. And I believe to make it possible, we will need a constitutional amendment. But my issue is that every time, apologies, I didn't want to use a curse word there. Every time we keep on, there's always this announcement from the National Assembly, constitutional amendment, bring your proposal, civil society, if you have an input. I don't know how many times as an organization and Spaces for Change that we have contributed over time to when it comes to constitutional amendment. And at the end of the day, what you see is these are beautiful talks on papers, on national TV, on the shelf. But when it comes to implementation, oh, Baba, we are going on vacation till next year again, then we continue this conversation. And like I said, it's actually mind-blowing that. And I keep asking myself, what exactly is the problem? Why can't we move from talk to just implementing? Why can't we make this work? And it's not even just at the high level. It also manifests itself at the lowest level. I work with communities, and you would not believe that communities that have gone through years of exclusion, marginalization, and when it comes to time that they are being mainstreamed into decision makings of things that affect their life. For example, during the PIA, when we then established the Host Community Development Trust Fund that allows community to take ownership of their resources, even though the PIA did not specifically put in policies, put in regulations that ensure that women are being mainstreamed in that body. You will expect that this Niger Delta people that have gone through years and years of exclusion, that have clamored for inclusion, when it comes to this rare opportunity, they will not even think twice to put women, this is at the lowest level now, to put women into these decision-making processes. But you would now see them replicating the same exclusion that they have gone through. And you will be like, are we okay upstairs? Are we good? Are we actually thinking? Like, what exactly is this? And you will see that, just like Lucy and Miriam mentioned, it starts with the very faulty foundation of our agent of socialization. That's from the family, from the religious body, from the schools, whereby from the early stage where you need to inculcate it in women that you are equally a leader as the man. The fact that the man or a man is looking, or a male child is looking at his father take that more domineering role doesn't mean that you as the lady, you have a secondary role. You can equally take leadership position. But that is not there. You don't see those things there. So it brings us back to the very faulty foundation. And we keep going in cycles over and over again. And that is why I think that, God forbid, we'll keep struggling and have this conversation. And I just pray that in the next 5 or 10 years, when I have children and when they are older, They would not come to a meeting like this and keep talking about Nigeria mainstreaming gender into governance and policies.
Amen to your prayer. We hope that we are able to champion the reform that we want to see for our children's children, the better Nigeria and the better Africa that we want to see. And hopefully these conversations will get to the right ears, and, the right reforms and policies will be implemented. We will see it hopefully in our lifetime. Thank you. I'm coming now to you, Miriam. You mentioned earlier when you were speaking, you spoke about, some, I think it was you or Lucy who talked about the gatekeepers. And we know that political parties are, a major factor in all of this. And, when it comes to their nomination fees, the tickets, you see elite negotiation in all of their process. It's mind-boggling. I saw the figures of how much nomination forms are sold at the political party level, and it begs the mind to say, how are people doing this? I see the reason why there is a lot of godfatherism, in all of this equation. But I just want to ask Miriam, what reforms at that party primary level, what reforms should be put in place? What reforms should primary rules or financial structures do better, at that level, to ensure that they have a level playing field for women, especially because we are encouraging ourselves. I hope you can hear me. We're encouraging ourselves to start from the grassroots. If I decide tomorrow that I want to do it, what are the factors? What are the level playing field, especially with the financing of participating at that level?
All right, thank you so much. I was almost feeling jealous, like I wasn't going to get contribute properly. But yeah. So one of the things we can do, one strategy we can adopt is like a donor network. There are donor networks out there that fund different things. If we can start to build like an Emily list, like donor networks that fund specifically their goal. You have funders who fund their green funds, just the way you have green funds who are intentional about funding green projects, agro projects, and all that. If we can have a donor network that specifically funds female candidates early, so primaries are actually where women lose the most, the primaries, and it's not just the general election. So when you have funders who are out there to ensure that there are more women funded for the elections at this stage, it will help a great deal. This will go a long way in encouraging women when they don't have to worry about building up the money and so on and so forth. This would really, really do a lot to encourage more women to join. I'm also going to run through, because I'm looking at the time, INEC. INEC also has a role to play. INEC should mandate that all parties publish their gender demographics for candidates. I think this will help a lot, because when we're talking about policies, when it becomes mandatory for parties to publish the list of candidates, then you will start to look at it right from that primary level. What's going on? You start to name and shame all parties that have zero female candidates or less than 5% female candidates. Let's make a culture. You can make a culture out of anything. So if they're intentional about things like that, this will help a lot. But I think most importantly, male allyship summarizes everything. He for she champions. We talk a lot about gender, but there's this thing about the boys in the conversation, the boys and the men in the conversation. We are not at loggerheads with men. It's not women versus men. You need men in this fight. You need men to actually say, she's got the grit, she's got the guts, she's got what it takes to lead. I will willingly step aside for her to lead. And I would back her, I would support her financially and with my vote. When you have more he for she champions, those male people out there like governors. Take for instance, I think it was Governor Abdul Razak. I think it was of Kwara State one time. I think he appointed about 56% female cabinet. And of course, he used it to pressure other men. So when you go right from the grassroots level, gender mainstreaming, but not just about women, but for the importance of male voices in putting women in political parties. When you teach men that their voices, when we say raise a voice, not just female voices, male voices are critical. In fact, if you listen to the entire conversation we've had, it makes you know that male voices are even more critical than female voices. When there's gender mainstreaming, like I know some NGOs now that are taking courses on male feminism, trying to get men more in the conversation. You cannot remove men from this conversation. So right from the grassroots level, primary school, gender mainstreaming has to be in there. Men need to know that your voice matters in supporting women. It will go a long way. We need gender champions who are men. Then you also need influential gender champions. When you want to promote a business, what do people do? They will look for influencers online and get them to promote their business. So let's start looking for those influential men in politics who are gender champions and get them to speak more for the women. If we look at these factors critically and you expand them, you'll be amazed how much it highlights on capacity building. It highlights on the mentality. It's a mindset shift. And then you can do it from the top and you can do it from the bottom. You have to combine it. It's like a hydra-headed approach. But gender mainstreaming has to go through to the boys. We need to focus more on the men, both the influential, both the high level, both the prominent, and the grassroots. Get religious leaders to put their voices on it. Get them to teach the men how important it is to have more women in positions of representation. You cannot have a policy for women being decided by men. And until the men come out to say, I know a woman who is in a position to actually champion this for women, there will be more male voices to silence him. But when you have men actually countering men and saying, no, this woman is worth it, and I will give her my money, I will back her, it will go a long way. And then INEC is the ultimate. INEC can do and undo. So let's just take those three for now and try to see how we can implement those three. I think that would go a long way. Donor networks. Let's start looking at how we can get donor networks for women, not just gender equality, but specifically for funding women in political parties. I think this will help. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Miriam. I want to come to first, let me open this up for conversation. I see that Ejiro has requested to speak. After Ejiro, I'll come to you, Kenny. I want us to talk about the cultural barriers, right? But I'll let Ejiro speak because she's been requesting to do that. And then we can open this up for other people who would like to say something. Please do send a request and we will allow you to make your comment. Ejiro, I'm allowing you now to go ahead, please, if you can hear me. Ejiro, can you hear me? I think you can speak now. Unmute yourself.
Well, I like that the research has actually highlighted many areas that many of us are aware of. Some persons may not be aware of them. And then there are also new interesting red zones that provided another kind of perspective to this conversation. These are fine. At the end of the day, what do we use research and data for? We use it to activate and re-strategize. And I'm going to speak as someone who has been in the inside corridors of where power is negotiated. That's the word. Power is negotiated. Power is also given and power can be taken. Women need to understand that. I'll share you an insight before I go into what women need to understand. When this bill, special seat bill, began a conversation, I had an insight 6 months prior to the fact that someone at the top echelon just wanted it as a political strategy that would give it some strength. And the goal was for political branding, political visibility and positioning, and political conversation so that it would quell women's sudden anger in the wake of so many that has happened within the last few months, especially with regards to how the National Assembly is being run at certain chambers. Now, that was said with the goal of simply never to make it become a reality. And that is a point we Nigerian women need to understand. Power is negotiated. Women, when we go into these spaces, must also understand the fact that at the end of the day, we're living in Nigeria, where there is a Nigerian albatross of cultural, socio-political, traditional conditioning, and where patriarchy reigns supreme. Patriarchy that is against even men themselves. So when you see men push back with the fact that they feel the special seats bill are just a token, it means to give seats to people who don't earn it. And then the women are just going to be there for showcase, because that's what it is. If they're going to be there for showcase and they don't have the decision-making power, then that is not power that has been negotiated. That is not power that has been given. That is actually power that has been taken and watered down to the point where you are becoming a tool in the hands of those who appoint you. Now, if you look at the state of affairs with all the women ministries across Nigeria, who have always manned it, aren't they women? They are women. And I think this is where we want to speak about conversations on taking accountability and responsibility. When you talk about donor agencies, how many women do you know today who have like a 10, 20-year plan to say, I want to be in politics, and these are my saving goals to that effect? We don't have that. The ministries of the women affairs, they've been there for 20 years or so, or more. Okay, well, let's go by 1999. What have they been for? What have they achieved? You talk about mobilization. You talk about women being half of the population. That half of the population you're talking about are often the numbers that actually go out to vote for men. So if you're looking for he for she's, come on, let's go start from the very beginning where it really matters, where it really matters. The women themselves voting for women. There's a psychological and traditional, I don't want to use patriarchy now. I think sometimes I'm tired of patriarchy and the way that it has been spinned over time. And I think it's about women also realizing that they are also the strong number one champions and enablers of patriarchy in Nigeria. Women supporting women is not a mantra. Women supporting women is understanding that, like you gave the example of Sweden, it is about decision-making power. Once women understand that politics is about being at the table where decisions are being taken that will influence your life in a manner that you cannot predict, then our approach to being in governance, engaging government, engaging the electorate, engaging your community is key. How many women do you know who are actually at their various homes that are known? We talk about indigenization matter and the conflict of it. But let's look at other women who have been in this space, from King Igwe to Tinubu's wife. These are women who did not actually, they just chose one side. They chose a side. If I'm going to choose my husband's side and that's where I'm going to win, then we're going to win it. We need to get to the point where, you see that conversation about when they say women are emotional, this is what we're talking about. If you know that there are hindrances and they are deliberate and the goal is to remove you, then you got to rechange your approach, your mindset, your strategy, and your entire financial bulwark. You need to renegotiate that in many ways. So, for example, I've had conversations with many women in politics and spaces, in NGOs and CSOs, and I tell you, some of these CSOs, we're good at research collection. Come on, when we bring out the data, it's fire. And who are we presenting this data and collection to? To high-end top people as well. The same people who will never give you the chance. You talk one, it passes through the other ear. But the grassroots, the very poor people, the very poor, wretched women, who these NGOs are supposed to directly go and influence and change their mindset and change their perception is key. So we go back to the fact that women have also gotten so many privileges. How many empowered other women? And for those who are empowered, what did you do with it? Do you also make sure that you take away the ladder from other women from climbing as well? Because that is also a permanent, recurrent conversation that is so obvious, so prominent in this space of politics. And women should come to a point where you understand that the nature of politics is to throw debt at you. That's the goal. Look at men who are thrown dead at. See the way they fight, So if you know you're going to go to politics in the space of Nigeria, we're not condoning it. I'm not encouraging it. I'm not supporting it or enabling it. I am saying that we need to get to the point where we get to realistically deal with the circumstance in which we find ourselves. The US today, where you have Poliski, she's finally handed over. I mean, her reign was something else. She was marvelous. But what did she do? She understood that the skill set she needs to develop to be in politics is not the skill set alone that the boardroom will give. The boardroom will give one type. The working environment will give another. Entrepreneurial spirit and exposure will give you another. But the key at the end of the day is your ability to take all of these various aspects of human relationships and dealings and see how you can negotiate yourself. I had a conversation the other day and we were trying to break it down about women funding. And what I discovered was that if you count how many women in Nigeria who have funding capacities, right, to say, I want to support a candidate, they don't exist. The one or two who are billionaires or hundreds of millionaires in that capacity, we don't even have conversations with these people. These people know how to back who will give them what they want. Are we saying that is the approach we should use? Perhaps, maybe it's time we review another way to get to them, to release the funding that they seek. And often than not, when funding are given, are they really directed in the direction they should go? There's so much I want to say, but these are just pointers. I feel it goes back to accountability. It goes back to women holding themselves to order, women planning ahead as they would any business venture they want to get into, and then knowing that from home is where the whole mindset change that we seek will begin for the next 10, 15, 20 years to come. So if mothers are still raising their sons to feel entitled and think their daughters are the entire storm makers in the home, and the boys are free to roam and do whatever they like, then the women too should know that they have been at the core of the root of the problem in the way they have raised men, or rather boys, who become men, who become decision makers in politics.
Thank you very much, Ejiro. That's a lot for us to unpack. And I think that that would, just direct me to the question I was going to ask Kenny earlier, because you said a lot of things. And one of the things you said was that build the confidence that the opportunities that women are given, what is done with that. You also said something about confidence, and you mentioned, education. And I want to direct this as a question to Kenny. And I think it's also caps exactly what we've been trying to say. The barriers, she has highlighted, and we all know that there are deep cultural barriers that affect the confidence and the leadership readiness, amongst women and girls. From your experience, I know you work at the grassroots level. What political approach, has worked to build confidence, and political literacy, and even that courage, public speaking? What has worked in that, at that level, in this the rural or the conservative communities, in your experience? Ken.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. And I quite agree with what Adrian said, because it's something that sometimes we do not acknowledge often. And I've seen how these dynamics, how they play out, particularly at the grassroots, and which is quite unfortunate because majority of the percentage that goes out to vote are those people at the grassroots. And just to digress a bit, also on gender, there was a time I was in a community and they brought a rape case to us, and we were there trying to look at the possible way of going about it, either through legal redress. And the lady was narrating how a very young girl, not even a lady, just in fact, I don't think she was up to 18 years. And she was talking about how ex-boyfriend, because she refused to date him again, lured her to an hotel, drugged her and raped her. And the woman leader that was with us, she didn't even allow the girl finish what she was saying. The moment she heard that they were formerly partners, she just dismissed the girl, called her a slut, called her a prostitute, and that was the end. And it took me, I just looked at her like I was so, I could not, I was dumbfounded. I was like, really? If we're not here, you're so actually supposed to be a symbol of motherhood. You are a woman leader. You're actually supposed to be a symbol of at least justice, pending the time you get the legal redress. And this is what you will tell this little child that came to you for help. And you see, that is the same cycle that actually replicates itself across board, not just when it comes to gender-based violence, also when it comes to politics. It's because women themselves sometimes reinforce the social cultural norms that limit their participation also in governance. You hear things that, oh, I cannot vote for her. Why is she going for a political position? What does she want to go and do there? What does she know that she wants to go and do there? Traditionally, a woman is supposed to be in the kitchen. Traditionally, a woman is supposed to be a caregiver. When she's in politics, how will she take care of her children? When she was in politics, who will she leave her children to take care of? Is it her husband that will now be acting as boy to take care of her children? A man is supposed to be the head of the family. A woman is supposed to be submissive. You get very irritating conversations like that, and you be like, okay. And you cannot blame them, because it took me years to understand that these women too, it is what the society has actually sold to them. It didn't just start now. It is what the society has taught these women for decades, that ambition is unfeminine, that your position is supposed to be at this particular place. You're meant to be seen, you're not meant to be heard. And even if you're meant to be heard, it's at this very minimal level that you're meant to be heard. Then you see over the years, women would now internalize this message and begin to pass it down. But not out of wickedness, but out of socialization. And this thing I'm saying is not actually just perpetrated by men, but is also reproduced in our family. I'm a living example. Not to call my father out, but I remember my dad, even if he was the one paying for my tuition and every of my education, he categorically told me that I don't know what you're doing with all of this aspiration of getting an higher degree, because at the end of the day, you end up in your husband's kitchen. And I just knew that he's educated. He's not illiterate. He reads the news. He knows what is going on. But that's just his belief. He's not being wicked. So even in the families, you will hear them reproduce this cultural norms, this cultural stereotypes. Even you hear elders, you hear religious groups, sometimes women themselves who have been taught to see leadership as a threat rather than as an asset. Then when you want to now start breaking down these barriers, it's actually very difficult, because they are the ones that will also oppose it. So one of the things that we have been doing is to build the capacity of these women, even at the grassroots, because these grassroots people have more influence than we give them credit for. If we want to make changes in our governance, we start from the bottom to the top. These people, and God knows I love working with them. Sometimes they can be an handful. I want to strongly believe that the more we put resources and investment into educating people at the grassroots and making them understand, not in our monoxide jargons and technical words that we often use and all this developmental language, they don't understand that. Bringing it down to the most simplest form and then the layman language, and showing them practical example of the benefit of what it will mean to have women that can lead and they can reproduce leader. I'm telling you that we will move step forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A lot has been said today. A lot has been, highlighted from the report, and many more from our lived experiences. And it's very interesting that this conversation is happening now, especially as we prepare towards the 2027 election. I think it's a very important conversation, especially for key persons in power to hear. And I know that we have voices in our own spaces. So it is important that we don't just have these conversations here and just say, oh, this is where it ends. It doesn't end here. At every opportunity and at every forum, every platform that we have, it is good that we keep, voicing this imbalance and, these gaps that needs to be, to be closed or bridged, such that we see more voices, we see more participation and more representation at the political and every sphere of governance in our communities and in Africa at large. I would let the panelists give their last remarks. I didn't see any other hand up to make a comment, so I'm just because of time, I'm going to let the speakers give like one or two remarks, just recommendations. I know that Lucy has highlighted a lot of recommendations in the report, and I would really encourage us to get that report if we haven't already. Read it, digest it, and see what the data is saying. I would let her go first to just give us 2 or 3 recommendations, and I'll let Miriam go next to just tell us in 2 minutes what are some basic things that we should be what should we be doing now to move the needle, if you ask me. Lucy, I'll let you go first, and then Miriam, and then I'll come to Kenny.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Rosemary. All right. Thank you. I think the conversation today has been very, very interesting. Hearing everybody's different people's opinion, from women being the antagonizing women to the system and the structures and the culture and some of the things that are being put in place within Nigeria's political system being a hindrance for women in governance. So part of my recommendation for increased women representation in governance is, like I said initially, the problem starts from the roots, which is the family unit. If we can get more girls and more the girl child being educated on, that she also can be a leader, both at home, both in school. We're not saying things like, just as Miss Miriam said initially, it's not like fight equity in the homes where girls are also being given that system and the encouragement to have that strong confidence and self-esteem to believe that one day she can actually also be the president of Nigeria. That's what we're calling for. Also, we're also calling for, as one of the I think Ms. Ejiro said, she said, women coming on board and then not allowing other women come on board. I would also recommend that there should be increased mentorship of women, women in leadership. From our research, we found out that there was something that the Swedish government did with some countries in East Africa, which is a mentorship program of ladies, and they found out that at the end of that mentorship program, more women wanted to be leaders after that mentorship program. So yes, if we could encourage more mentorship, women empower mentoring other women, if we could have more women like Obiezekwe Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and the likes who have been in government, actually taking some young upcoming girl or woman who wants to go into governance under their wings and showing them what to do, how to do, and actually guiding them through these ropes, that would be great. Also, we could also recommending structural reforms down from the political parties up even to the highest strata of government, that structures, even in appointment, you could see from the list being brought out as well. Appointments such as that shouldn't even be done based on, some of the appointments that are put in place shouldn't be done based on loyalty, but more on, credentials. So these are structural changes that can actually better women representation in governance. I will leave that at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you. Miriam, I'll let you go next.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Rosemary, and thank you, Lucy, for every word that has come. Lucy has highlighted on some points I would, so I'll just take it from that. I mean, elections, data has shown that the grassroots actually carry a high percentage of voters. So the grassroots is somewhere where we need to center our attention in terms of capacity building, revisit the curricula in schools. It's important that you revisit the curricula and include leadership and advocacy as part of the school curricula, right from JSS 1, the secondary school level. Ensure that children are taught a balance between male leadership and female leadership, and why it's important to have more female representation in leadership. At this point, you'll be able to impact the youth. Also, champions. We need to have more female women. Yes, they're a very small percentage that we have currently in Nigeria, women in leadership. But you see, that small percentage still carry influence. You need to showcase them to the grassroots, make them mentors, make them champions, as she has said. In the universities, right from 100 level, 200 level, let's have programs whereby influencers, the leaders, the prominent ones can actually interact with university level students, secondary level students, and build up capacity within them. I will not leave out the boys from this conversation because the boys play a critical role. Men and boys play a critical role. And unless we actually begin to have that conversation around the roles men and boys play in this conversation, then when we're going to be leaving them out, and we'll have a problem down the line. So we need, it's very, very critical that we include men and boys in our capacity building and gender mainstream. We need to be intentional about that. Also, empowerment. Support is what we see that has been lacking structurally, politically, and culturally. There's a report Dataphyte did, the multiple indicator cluster survey, that was just talking about battery, wife battery. In the cases of FGM, we've seen women at the quarters. Women actually support FGMs, rather unfortunate. So capacity building is very, very big in this conversation. Even in wife battery, we had a higher percentage of women who believed that men were justified for 5 or 6 reasons for battering their wives. If they burn the food, if they leave the house without telling their husband. So it shows you that there's a need for a mindset shift. Women need to have retreats. Women need to have these conversations. And these are not conversations for a knowledgeable audience. We can have this conversation because we are aware. These conversations need to be had at the grassroots level, like she said, in layman English, where they can understand. Let's connect the dots. This will help us move forward faster. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Miriam. Interesting. Kenny, you are up next.
Okay, my recommendation, even though I said that it's exhausting and exasperating, but I think one of my recommendations is that we don't stop. We keep going at it till we get what we want. I might not get it in this generation, but I can be part of that legacy when people look back and say, okay, we finally got it. And I would also encourage that, looking at the research that Dataphyte has done, and also extant literature that is out there on everything, gender, inequality, governance, everything that is all encompassing of gender, that we really look and dissect and look at possible ways to really understand how those drivers work across the different levels, either state or the grassroots level, and look at the dynamics of how it also works even in this different level. That they are being look at also within the demographics of how it works too. Because it's a lot. It's not, you can never have a one size fits all approach to all of these things. And it's like as if you're putting out a fire in one place and there's another one in another place. And you cannot work in silo. That is one thing I've come to understand when it comes to mainstreaming gender across board. You need all hands to be on deck. I do not want this research by Dataphyte to just be a beautiful research and this is just a beautiful conversation, but we really look at this research and say, okay, in this aspect, this is the place I want to focus my energy on. This is the place I want to focus on learning and helping communities or literate or intellectual people rethinking what leadership looks like. encouraging women support and mentoring other women, and also challenging internalized belief that limits ambition. You can try to take yours at the community level and look at, okay, for teens and young women, how do I go about this? And I believe strongly that if women are not fully convinced that women belong in leadership, then the progress that we want to see will be very, very slow. So I think we need to work and target at what is the root cause of this issue so that we don't keep repeating the same cycle over and over and over again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to all the panelists for the time and for your the wisdom and for all of this that you have put on the table for us to go back to our places to reflect on and to unpack. If you haven't read the report already, it is out on the Dataphyte website. Please go ahead, download it, and many other reports that Dataphyte have done. The very recent one also, cost of state policing in Nigeria. That's another interesting conversation, especially with the insecurity that is going on in Nigeria. We also want to go and have a look at what data is saying about, state policing, amongst many other reports. And if you're not following Dataphyte, please do well to follow. So you can get other reports as they come out. Again, thank you to everyone for your time and for joining this conversation. And let it not just end here. Again, like I said, please, every opportunity that you have to, keep pushing this topic to the front burners, to the legislators, to anyone that is in a position to take action or to make these things happen. Please let us always sound this in their ear and not just let this conversation end at our spaces or at our webinars. Again, thank you so much. It is way past our time, and I want to appreciate everyone for joining, and we hope to see you at the next space. Thank you again, everyone, and enjoy. Oh, sorry, Lizzie, I'm just seeing your request. I don't know if we still, no, let me not be tempted. Please join us at the next one, and maybe we'll be able to take more of your questions and comment. Apologies for not able to take your comment, Lizzie. But thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.